the differences between the two men, I believe that Americans are going to choose good over evil.
Jill Biden showed up on the set of The View, and I never thought I'd be able to say this, but she, sitting at that table, actually brought down the collective IQ even further. This was possibly one of the most insipid and phony exercises I've ever seen in American news broadcasting. And I do want to remind you, The View is a news show, not an entertainment show, not a daytime television show. No, it's under the umbrella of the news division at ABC. They should be so proud. Here, take a little sample of Dr. Jill joining the Mensa Club there on the Upper West Side of Manhattan.
Inflation has slowed. Unemployment is down. The stock market is soaring. We finally have movement with infrastructure, climate issues, but some voters are still worried about where America is heading.
Well, we are in a better place now, and what you're saying is true, and we have to get out that message. Every vote counts. This election is important. Joe has done amazing things for this country, and we have to get the message out.
No, just like she rehearsed it in front of the mirror. Does it bother anyone else that she talks like a 14-year-old girl on TikTok? Is this weird? I mean, we know that Joe has a thing about, getting kind of handsy with younger women and smelling their hair. Is this something that she's just trained herself to do with the little girl voice to sort of keep him interested? This is just gross. By the way, the premise of the question that Sunny Hostin started with, the lies begin from the very first utterance. What did she ask?
Now, the country, in my view, is in a great place on so many fronts, right?
Yeah, we're in a great place on so many fronts. I'm sorry, Sunny, if you look at the polls right now, Joe Biden is underwater on the current state of affairs in this country, whether it's national security or immigration or border security or crime or education or the economy or unemployment or inflation and wrong direction numbers, forget about it, if I may quote Robert De Niro. So the premise that things are going great, but there's still some hesitancy out there. What are you talking about? No one in this country thinks they're going great unless they're friends of Joe Biden and they'll be able to grift off of the big spending bills that he's been able to push through and then funnel to his pals, or more importantly, to Hunter's pals. All right, so then Joy Behar really ups the quota here on the brilliant questions.
About his age, that really drives me nuts because I'm the same age as your husband.
Yes!
I got to interrupt this one just for two quick observations. First of all, one that I consistently try to throw your way, which is no one's worried about Joe Biden's age. It really isn't the age that's the problem. The problem is that he has mashed potato for brains. Now, if Joy Behar actually had some cojones there, which I know she doesn't because, I'm guessing she doesn't, she would actually ask that question, not about his age. No one looks at Joe Biden and say, wow, he seems really old. No, they look at him and say, wow, there's something wrong with his brain functions. He can't put a sentence together or words together. He stumbles everywhere. He doesn't know where he's going on the stage or where he's supposed to exit. In fact, the premise of this question leads me to my second observation. The fact that Joy Behar is a functioning human being with a real job and is able to speak coherently and is the same age as President Biden proves my point. Here's Jill Biden applauding Joy Behar. You're the same age as Joe. Well, good for you. Good for you. What do you mean good for you? She's living proof that there is something seriously wrong with the brain functions of the president of the United States. That's what the question should be. The question should be, Jill, he's my age, but look at me. I'm normal. I can function. If God knows a special prosecutor had evidence that I had committed a crime, he would press charges. He wouldn't say, let's not do it because no jury in the world will convict since he can't even remember the year that his son died. See, no one would treat me that way, even though I'm the same age, Jill. So what the hell is wrong with your husband? What's with the brain damage? That should have been the question. It wasn't the question, though. The question was exactly how the campaign wrote it out for her to ask, because Jill has memorized a certain number of answers. She's practiced them in front of the mirror, and now she's going to deliver one because the question was asked exactly the way Joy Behar was told to ask it.
Because I want people to know this is what 81 is. But what do we have to do to tell people that the man is competent, alert, and doing the job? The other one is doddering and doesn't remember anything and can't put a sentence together and has like brain farts in the middle of a paragraph and they go after Joe.
This election is not about age. Donald Trump's going to be, what, 78? They're basically the same age. This election is about character. Two choices. You have my husband, Joe, integrity. He's strong. He's steady. He's a leader. He's smart. He's energetic. Or you have chaos.
No, this is just embarrassing. And again, all the nodding around and the affirmations from the people on this panel are disgusting. But she is right. It's not about age. The fact that she's saying Trump and Biden are basically the same age, so it's a wash, actually helps Trump, because when they're side by side, you can see the difference, right? And by the way, I mean, again, if I were at the panel, and I'm never allowed to be on a panel like this, I would say, you know what? You're right. It is about character. So what's the deal with his daughter's diary and all that stuff about him showering with her? That's kind of a character issue, isn't it? And also Hunter. I mean, he says that he's a great dad, and well, you'll know them from their fruits, right? So let's talk about the fruit of Hunter Biden. He raised Hunter. What's going on with him? You want to make it about character? Let's talk about the whole Biden family. But again, I'm not allowed on that panel.
What is the strategy that the president has going into this? Any tips you'd have?
No, they've built that in where they're going to turn off those mics so that somebody can't ramble, scream at somebody. You know, not that my husband would be the one doing that. No. American people deserve a debate because you need to see your choices. You need to see Trump and you need to see the president. And you're going to see how smart he is and the experience he has. And then you'll see somebody who can't put a sentence together. Right. The American people deserve to see the two men who are running for this office because your choice is going to be clear.
You know, when Biden backs out of the debate for whatever reason that they come up with, this clip is really going to come back to haunt them. And I do think that he's still going to back out of that debate because the fact of the matter is putting them side by side will make the choice very clear. And, well, that's the last thing that they want.
Poll after poll that are showing Trump beating your husband outside of the margin of error. How do you turn those numbers around with 5 months out? And are you fearful of what a second Trump term could look like?
Or a third. Those polls are going to turn. I'm confident of it because as time goes on and as people start to focus a little bit more about what's at stake and start to become educated on the issues and the differences between them, I believe that Americans are going to choose good over evil.
This is amazing to me if you really think about what she just said, because they do want this election to be about so-called good versus evil. And by the way, in my heart, I do believe it's good versus evil when you look at what the Democrats are standing for and promoting, taking the side of Hamas terrorists and in favor of federal funding of child mutilation. You know, seems pretty evil to me. Not to mention federal funding of the murder of unborn babies. But set all of that aside for a moment. The American people in the polls, according to Joe Biden, just need to be educated on the issues. Think about that for a minute. So the polls are the way they are right now because the American people are too stupid to get it. They're not educated on the issues, and we're going to educate them on the issues. And then they'll see the clear choice between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Lady, this is the same choice we had 4 years ago. The only new equation in this choice from 4 years ago is that what a presidency under Joe Biden would look like and what it would do to the country was kind of a mystery. People were sort of taking a guess. Well, he can't be that bad. Well, now we know. Now we know exactly how bad it is. The only new information that we have is the hell we've been living through for the last 3.5 years. We just need to educate. Let me tell you something. If their goal was to educate the American voter about the great track record of Joe Biden, then they'd be spending a lot of time talking about the great track record of Joe Biden, but they don't. They don't. All they do, and all she does in this interview, as you'll see in the remaining clips, all she does is try to scare you about what Donald Trump's going to do. That's not about educating the voter about the issues. It's about fear-mongering. That's all they've got.
And we've heard Trump bragging about stripping women's reproductive rights. 14 states have a total ban.
I'm sorry. I'm trying not to interrupt all these clips, but I do have to just jump in this one. Donald Trump doesn't brag about stripping women of their reproductive rights. Okay. First of all, what he brags about is actually following through on a promise that Republican presidents have been making for decades, and that is to get Supreme Court justices who will overturn Roe v. Wade. And he did it. He's the only one who's done it, even though I've been hearing promises from Republican presidents for years, decades, in fact. Like it or not, Donald Trump's the one who did it. That's not bragging about stripping women of their reproductive rights. It's bragging about fulfilling your promise to put this decision back in the hands of the states instead of this warped decision that was made at the Supreme Court level instead of letting the people decide something so fundamental and important. And one other quick correction, if I could. If you've got liberal friends on your Facebook page or in social media or in the cubicle next to you at work, or God forbid at your Thanksgiving Day dinner table, and they use this, it's my favorite euphemism of them all for abortion, for killing a baby. If they use the women's reproductive rights euphemism, would you please just hold up your hand for a second and say, listen, I'm more than interested in having a conversation with you about abortion and the killing of unborn babies. Let's have that conversation. But the euphemisms have to go away here, because this has nothing to do with reproductive rights. You see, by the time a woman walks in to a Planned Parenthood abortion mill, she's already reproduced. Okay. The reproductive act has already happened. Abortion has nothing to do with the right to reproduce. Every single woman who has an abortion, and the men who aid them and are complicit in it, because I don't want to just make this about women, every single person involved in an abortion has already participated in the reproductive act. Reproduction is done. It's in the rearview mirror. What you're doing is ending the product of that reproduction. Okay? So stop with the euphemism. It's insulting to our intelligence. And if I may, anti-science.
How dangerous a time is this for women, and how much worse could it get in a second or third, as you mentioned, Trump presidency?
Well, it could get a lot worse under a Trump presidency. I mean, you have to believe him when he uses words like dictator, bloodbath, third term, violence. Don't think this isn't going to happen. But we cannot take things for granted, because they can. And think of the Supreme Court. Can you imagine if we put any more Republicans on the Supreme Court? We will lose all of our rights. We will lose our rights and freedom. Voting rights. Yes.
So just again, because this is all about educating the voter, there was nothing educational about that. That was fear-mongering and scare tactics. But I would like to participate in some education for you. The Supreme Court cannot take away any of your rights, nor can the Supreme Court grant you any rights. You were born with your rights, and the Constitution protects the government from infringing on those rights. Now, what was decided in Roe v. Wade was not the granting of the right to have an abortion. It was the interpretation of something that's not even in the Constitution, the right to privacy, and extending that to a woman's right to kill her unborn child. And that has been corrected now with the Dobbs decision, because I would remind all of the liberals on the panel, especially this one right here, Whoopi Goldberg, that there was a time when the Supreme Court codified the right to own another human being as a slave. Was that the Supreme Court granting people a right? No. That was the Supreme Court making a horrific decision that had to be undone. And it was undone by the 13th Amendment and the 14th Amendment after the Civil War. That's what it takes. So this has nothing to do with rights. It has to do with bad Supreme Court justices making bad law. There, see? Isn't it fun to educate voters? I mean, they're not doing any of that, but I'm glad we are.
Joe is going to fight for climate change. Joe supports education. Joe supports health care. Those are the things I think that the youth care about.
Loan forgiveness.
Yes, thank you. Student loan forgiveness.
This was a great moment when Sunny Hostin, the NBC News host on this show, actually had to remind Joe Biden about her own talking points that she forgot. The question, of course, had to do with the youth vote. Why are young people not on board? And she said, well, he's for climate. This is, by the way, just the most outraging. What's the word? Because outrageous makes it sound like it's funny. But this outrages me. When the American people are broken into little categories based on either their age or their body parts or their skin color. And Democrats do this all the time. Sadly, some Republicans fall into the trap too. People at a certain age, they are not supporting you. Why is it? And then they just tick off like a laundry list. Well, climate change and student loan debts and this and that. And we're on board with that. So why aren't you voting for me? Well, maybe because we think you're a corrupt liar. And maybe, just maybe, based on my age, that doesn't mean that that's something that really matters to me because I've been hearing about it forever and nobody does anything about it. But Sonny Hostin having to remind her that he has defied a Supreme Court decision and gone ahead and put through this fakakta student loan repayment, which is unconstitutional, illegal, and unfair to anyone who either didn't go to college or figured out a way to pay for college without going into debt, or figured out a way to pay off their loans because they were a good, upstanding, responsible citizen who makes good on their debts. They're bragging about that. Well, we're doing this for young people. No, actually, you're not doing it for young people. You're relieving student loan debt for millennials who got advanced degrees and now can't get jobs, and they're basically serving people lattes with a PhD in anthropology. That's who you did it for.
The things that he's working for, and working against, we don't have automatic rifles so that, our kids are safe.
Automatic rifles. So our kids are safe. People don't get automatic rifles right now. They get semi-automatic rifles. They don't have automatic rifles. They're not allowed. She's just a moron. So are the people on the panel at The View, and so are the people in the audience. But you're not. That's why we have fun mocking them for how stupid they are and dangerous. One last clip. Speaking of dangerous, stupid morons.
The economy is doing well. Stock market is up. Unemployment is the lowest since the 60s, under 4%. People are working.
It was actually lower under Donald Trump. The stock market soaring, by the way. Last time I checked, Democrats don't care about Wall Street and big business and those evil corporations, right? But I do love it when it becomes a talking point for them. Everything she's saying right now is a lie. But the best part is these are actual bullet point talking items that the campaign puts out, and she's just reading them because she's a journalist.
Yes. And yet people are still worried about inflation. Talk about that for a second, about what it means. What can Joe do about inflation?
Well, inflation is down, but recently he's been meeting with CEOs, Target and Walmart and grocery stores. You have to bring down these prices. You probably heard last week, McDonald's said, we're going to bring the prices down on the meals. Burger King that said, okay, we're going to do it too. Corporate greed. We have to get control of it.
Boy, that's going to help Wall Street by blaming corporations and corporate greed for inflation. Do you believe that? Do they believe that the inflation problem is really just corporate greed? It's just corporations trying to make more money. So they've raised prices artificially. Do you really think that's what it is? I think they actually do believe that. And I think you know better. All right, well, there you go. This is a great example of really how desperate they are right now and how they've got nothing. And if this is what the campaign is going to be about, good Lord, it's the fact that they have to trot her out. She was there selling her children's book, by the way, about the White House cat. Not a whole lot of talk about the cat in that segment. She's there fielding questions as if she's the president. Why don't they bring Joe on to answer all those questions? Do you think Joe would have performed the same way at that table if they brought him on to ask those questions? I mean, why not? He's the same age as Joy. That's The View for you. ABC News should be so proud. So proud.